Dear students, welcome to the MOOC on India's foreign policy in a globalizing world. In this lesson, we are going to discuss about Indo-Russian relations in the post-Cold War period. Main objectives of the lesson are to know about the bilateral relations between India and Russia after the disintegration of the Soviet Union, to understand the improvements in bilateral relations, to know the major areas of cooperation between India and Russia. We begin with the first part of the lesson, in which we will discuss about India-Russia relations during Boris Yeltsin regime, the renewal of 1971 Indo-Soviet Treaty, the rupee-ruble arrangement, the Kashmir issue, India's permanent membership of the United Nations Security Council, military and technical cooperation agreement, and the deal on cryogenic technology. After the disintegration of the Soviet Union in 1991, 15 republics replaced the mighty state of the USSR. The international community recognized Russia as the successor state of the USSR. The Indo-Soviet Treaty of Friendship and Cooperation, which had only been renewed a few months before, virtually lost its value. This diplomatic shift created a period of uncertainty in Indo-Russian relations as both sides re-evaluated their strategic priorities and diplomatic alliances. The cordial relations that was presented in the bilateral relations of both the nations was not visible for the better part of 1992. There were disparities found among the Russian leaderships with regard to Indo-Russia relations in the initial period of President Boris Yeltsin. Some argued for the continuity of traditional ties, while others argued for building new kinds of relationship free of ideological prejudices as there had been in the past. However, a few were naive advocates of the United States policy who wanted to give strategic meaning to US-Russian relationship by ignoring the importance of Indo-Russian relationships. After the disintegration of the Soviet Union, Russia was in an economic distress. This was the reason why Russia wanted to get closer to the United States. As a result, Russia followed a cautious foreign policy, seeking friendship from both the Western Bloc as well as the non-aligned states. Russia attempted to get entry into the group of 7 highly industrialized nations for economic cooperation, but it was rejected by the Western countries, and even they were not willing to provide support to overcome Russia's economic predicament. This made Russia realize that it should not compromise its ties with India while seeking friendship with the United States. Many experts warned Russia against ignoring trusted friendship like with India while seeking new alliances with Western powers. Economic liberalization, which was introduced by both India and Russia after the Cold War, led to the interest of both countries in multipolar world order. Yet Indo-Russian interdependency was always present. India depends on Russia for its military and technological assistance, whereas Russia needs India to import numerous consumer goods. But both the nations are attracted to keep a tie with the US, which is the major power. Balancing their relationships with the US while preserving their Indo-Russian partnership presented a complex diplomatic challenge for both countries. India-Russia relations during Boris Yeltsin regime. Boris Yeltsin, the first president of Russian Federation, will be remembered in India as the man who re-established Moscow's relations with New Delhi. It was during his regime that the doubts regarding the Indo-Russian relations were cleared. The major events that happened in the Indo-Russian relations during Yeltsin's regime follows. Yeltsin visited India in 1993 and had prolonged negotiations with Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao. It is considered as a watershed moment in the Indo-Russian relationship. This visit of President Yeltsin resulted in the following: the renewal of 1971 Indo-Soviet Treaty. This treaty was signed between Indira Gandhi and Brezhnev, which is considered as significant in Indo-Soviet relations, but this lost its value after the collapse of the Soviet Union. During Yeltsin's visit to India in 1993, the two countries signed a 20-year treaty of friendship and cooperation and re-established Moscow's relation with India. He also assured India that Russia would follow the already established policies of friendship and cooperation that had been pursued by the Soviet Union for decades and reaffirmed Russia's commitment to respect India's security and territorial integrity. The rupee-ruble arrangement. India and Russia had a dispute over the size of India's debt to Russia for military and commercial trade during the Soviet era. The dispute was aroused due to the rapidly falling value of ruble. India claimed that it owes Russia almost $12 billion, but Russia was of the opinion that it was $15 billion. As a part of Yeltsin's visit, both countries reached an agreement which reduced India's credit burden by 30% and ended differences in economic military cooperation. Support on the Kashmir issue. During Yeltsin's visit to India, he openly expressed his unwillingness to give military and technical assistance to Pakistan. He said about Kashmir that, I quote, "The truth was on the Indian side," end quote. India sincerely valued President Yeltsin's stern and unyielding support on the Kashmir issue. Support for India's permanent membership of the United Nations Security Council. President Yeltsin announced that Russia would support India's candidature for the permanent membership of the UN Security Council whenever there is a reformation in the Security Council. This gesture highlighted Russia's recognition of India's rising global significance. Military and technical cooperation agreement. India was dependent on the Soviet Union for its military equipment. Arms sales were a major part of India's trade with the former Soviet Union. 70% of army armaments, 80% of air force armaments and 85% of navy armaments were of Soviet origin. Since the major parts of its arsenal were Soviet made, India was in grave need of spare parts, services and maintenance from Russia for its upgradation. India was unable to get spare parts after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. Russia wanted to restore its arms trade with India to boost its defense industry, which was an integral part of the Russian economy, which had fallen significantly. Yeltsin's visit resulted in Russia agreeing to continue supplying defense equipment and spare parts to India. He also announced plans to build a factory to manufacture spare parts for airplanes, tanks and other equipment in India. The uncertainty regarding the supply of armaments for the Indian security forces was ended by this military and technical cooperation agreement. Deal on cryogenic technology. President Yeltsin affirmed that Russia would assist India in the development of cryogenic engines for its use in India's peaceful outer space research program. Meanwhile, the United States put pressure on Russia to withhold the promised supplies. This pushed India to build its own indigenous technology for the cryogenic engine for the space program. The US opposed the deal on the ground, arguing that it could be used for civil as well as military purposes. Russia had to yield to the pressure from the US due to its economic predicament. Russia was in need of support from the West to revive its economy, and it was trying to be closer to the latter. This created doubts in the Indian leadership regarding the prospect of Indo-Russian relations. After several high-level visits from both the parties, including Narasimha Rao's visit to Russia in 1994, the two countries agreed to take the necessary steps to eliminate obstacles in bilateral trade. Subsequent leaders in both India and Russia built on Yeltsin's foundation, and their relationship evolved with the changing geopolitics while maintaining core aspects of their partnership. India-Russia Summit in March 1997. In March 1997, an Indo-Russian summit was held when the then Prime Minister H.D. Deve Gowda visited Moscow. He met President Yeltsin and Prime Minister Viktor Chernomyrdin. The visit proved to be a pivotal event, with many agreements being negotiated at the end of the talks. Agreements for double taxation avoidance, customs cooperation and mutual aid, plant protection and quarantine, and on extradition treaty were among them. Russia agreed to supply two 1000 megawatts atomic reactors for about 17,000 crores Indian rupees for this purpose. In addition, Russia and India agreed on a comprehensive and long-term defense supply cooperation agreement. During the meeting, Yeltsin told Deve Gowda about his desire to work with India in the fields of hydroelectric energy and military cooperation. The overall result was that Russia drew closer to India after being deceived by Western countries because it had not been granted full membership in the G7 until then, nor had Bill Clinton agreed to cease his ambitions to expand NATO. We have been friends and we remain friends, President Yeltsin declared at the end of the Gowda-Yeltsin discussions during the summit. He stated that India was a regional stabilizing power. Yeltsin's acknowledgement of India as a regional stabilizing power reflected Russia's recognition of India's influence in South Asia, India's role in maintaining regional stability, and its commitment to peaceful coexistence were key factors in strengthening the bilateral relationship. I hope you understood about India-Russia relations during Boris Yeltsin regime, the renewal of 1971 Indo-Soviet Treaty, the rupee-ruble arrangement on the Kashmir issue, India's permanent membership of the United Nations Security Council, military technical cooperation agreement on the deal on cryogenic technology. We will discuss about the Kargil crisis, India-Russia relations in the 21st century and India-Russia cooperation in vital areas in the next video. Thank you.